Please be seated. Family and friends, my name is Ray Frew, and on behalf of Barry's family, I welcome you here today to farewell, celebrate, but more importantly, pay tribute and reflect on a very, very special man's life. Loved ones within the chapel today and those who sadly can't be here due to distance, COVID or health would certainly endorse those words I've shared with you in regards to Barry being a very, very special man. And of course, if we weren't living in the current situation of COVID, we would certainly need a chapel perhaps 3 times the size to cater and have the appropriate people, being family members and of course members of the force along with friends who would be here today as we reflected and pay tribute to this great man's life. All of us here today extend our deepest sympathy to Barry's family at an extremely difficult time in their life. And you know, sadly, there are no words that I could use here today that would help Barry's family as they endeavour to cope with this tragic loss, but it will be extended family and of course friends that the immediate family will call on and draw on for support to get them through an extremely difficult time in their life. And I know after spending time with Jenny, Stephen and Linda the other day, they are overwhelmed by the well wishes and support they have been receiving, but more importantly, the love and the tribute that have been flowing in regards to the tragic loss of their father. And I can assure you, the family will need the support of extended family along with friends as they endeavour to both deal and cope with the emotional roller coaster they will be on with the tragic loss of their father. Barry was born on the 11th of April 1936 and is one of 2 children to his parents, both Norman and Emily, who are both sadly deceased, and of course a much loved and devoted brother to Jan, who is here today as we reflect and pay tribute to her much loved brother's life. And as I mentioned, a devoted, caring and loving father. to Jenny, Stephen and Linda, who are here today, as we reflect and pay tribute to the much-loved father's life, a loving, caring husband to Shirley, who has sadly passed. They were married in 1958, some 63 years, which certainly speaks and is a testament to their devotion and love and care to each other. You know, when we have a family unit, we have children ourselves, and they enter into either marriage or relationship, we may sit and pray that they themselves, when they're fortunate to have children, and this certainly was the case for Barry. He was a very, very proud grandfather, a big part of his grandchildren's life, affectionately known as Grandad. Barry was a big part of his grandchildren's life, but more importantly, the grandchildren were a bigger part of Barry's life, and I'll share a tribute with you shortly as the grandchildren reflect, but more importantly, pay tribute to a man they loved and adored, no doubt. Also, he was a much-loved father-in-law to both John and Stephen, who have been a big part of Barry's life, along with, not only was Barry fortunate to have loved ones such as family amongst him, he had a great network of friends. I'm about to share a name with you who has been a very, very big part of Barry's life, being Bob McDonald, who certainly has been there for a long time and has been a big part of Barry's life. For the support of Bob, I know the family is extremely grateful for that particular gentleman who has been there and shared and created, no doubt, a lot of memories throughout Barry's life's journey. This was a man who was very, very family orientated, and that will be shared and reflected throughout Barry's service today. I'll just cover a few aspects of Barry's life, as you'll hear a tribute from Barry's son in Stephen as he reflects and pays tribute to his father's life. Barry primarily lived in two suburbs throughout his life, being both Greenacre and Punchbowl. Hobbies, well, he enjoyed nothing more than painting and drawing, and I believe he was quite good at it. I speak of sport, he enjoyed rugby league. He also played his junior football around Belmore, and he also played for the police force when the opportunity was there. He represented his country in the Air Force. Travel, he restricted himself primarily within Australia, but enjoyed company and the opportunity with family when they went to New Zealand, both 1968 and 1976. Music, well, he enjoyed and loved nearly all music, but he did have a soft spot, I believe, for the saxophone. I speak of movies, Marlon Brando, Spike Milligan, and there's a mob called the Googs, which he was quite fond of. Food, he loved his Chinese, but he also enjoyed baked dinners at home. Pets, he always had dogs around him. He called Lassie, and there was also another dog by the name of Trixie, which has been a big part of Barry's life. For me to stand here in front of you today as family and friends and say that Barry will be sadly missed is an understatement. But as family and friends, you're extremely fortunate. You have been part of Barry's life's journey, and you have those memories that no doubt you will both treasure and cherish for a long, long time. I mentioned at the opening of the service that sadly some loved ones can't be here today. I'm about to share a tribute from loved ones being the grandchildren as they reflect and pay tribute to their much-loved granddad. It's incredibly difficult to put into words the love, admiration and gratitude we have for the man we knew as Grandad. Our happiest memories as children were in the presence of our grandparents. We would constantly ask, when are we going to Nan and Grandad's? Every day spent there was an adventure full of activities, including learning how to paint, burning our names in the piece of wood with a magnifying glass, playing with the farm animals out of the toy box and blowing bubbles till we were dizzy. No matter what we were doing, Grandad always found a creative way to make even the most mundane things fun. We would look forward to our sleepovers at their house with our specific routine of ordering pineapple chicken from the local Chinese restaurant and watching MASH on the lamb with Grandad in the afternoon. We didn't care if we were doing the groceries, running errands, or dropping friends off. As long as we were there with Grandad, we were happy. Throughout school, there would not be a single concert, award ceremony or sporting event that they would miss. We would never miss the opportunity to spot them in the crowd for a cheeky wave. They made friends with our friends and their grandparents. And with a cheer squad like we were unstoppable. Grandad was an intelligent, kind, funny and creative person who we have to learn so much from over the years in his company. He always had time for his grandchildren and never wasted a chance to teach us to appreciate art, creativity, culture and music in its capacity. We are forever grateful for the laughs and fond memories with Grandad, and now say our goodbyes with love always. Your grandchildren, Brittany, Courtney, Taylor, Cryan and JC. I mentioned at the opening that certainly that Barry was a big part of his grandchildren's life. If that doesn't endorse the love and respect these 5 grandchildren have for him, well, certainly I haven't noted or seen or heard a reflection and respect and love than what we've all been privileged to hear today. I mentioned at the opening that Stephen will pay tribute as he reflects on his father's life. I now have that honour inviting Stephen to come forward and commence a tribute to his much-loved father on behalf of the family. Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, Ray. Okay, normally in these circumstances, I'd be speaking to a room packed full of Dad's family and friends, but thanks to COVID and at the moment, we have to go without a lot of things, including haircuts, as you can see. A bit of a disclaimer before I start. Baz had a decent innings, as he would put it, at 85 years, and in that time he squeezed a lot in. I've tried to condense things down a bit and still hit all the main points. Some things may be slightly out of order, but I've done my best. Also got to say that Dad wouldn't be happy if I did everything with a straight face and everything was all very rigid, and he would expect some level of humour. So here we go. Ray's touched on a few points already, but I'll just go on with what I've spent the time writing. Baz was born in the small town of Minlaton on the York Peninsula in South Australia on the 11th of April 1936, the first child of Norman and Emily Grove-Jones. He then moved around the country with his parents, and in July 1939 his sister and only sibling Janice, or Jan as everyone knows her, was born in the town of Parkes in central New South Wales. The family continued to travel before finally settling in the southwestern Sydney suburb of Punchbowl a couple of years later. His dad continued to be away from home periodically for work, leaving his mum Emmy to referee the kids, Baz in particular. Around this time she became involved in the local Baptist church, and Baz and Jan were dragged along in their Sunday best on a regular basis. Baz wasn't overly interested in the whole religion thing, but did like the weekly Bible chapter search, where the first kid to find a nominated chapter in the Bible would win sixpence. Needless to say, Baz became very good at this particular task, regularly claiming the prize. He was also by now showing his adventurous side, enjoying the paddocks and dairy farms that were still existing in Punchbowl at the time. He's known for getting into all sorts of mischief, either with or without his mates. There were water slides created on the benches at the nearby limestone quarry, and dodgy rafts and fishing nets made out of scrap corrugated iron and some of his mum's old curtains to be used down at the nearby creek. There was also the time he created a beautiful bow for his little sister Jan's hair out of plasticine, which was lovely until it melted. If I'm not mistaken, Jan, that episode resulted in an impromptu haircut to repair the damage. The fun and games continued for Baz throughout these younger years, and when about the age of 10, he was identified as a student with promise and was selected to attend Opportunity School at Erskineville for Year 6 before heading into high school at Canterbury Boys High. It was during a high school bus journey that he noticed a pretty girl around his age on the bus. And as all men know, when you see a girl you take a fancy to, you have to get her attention and let her know you're there. So Baz threw a caterpillar at her. They were both 14 at the time, and the girl's name was Shirley, and would end up being our mum years later. Though there were twists and turns in where they both lived over their high school years, Mum and Dad both resided in the Bankstown Punchbowl area and eventually found each other again in their late teens and began dating. By then, Baz had his licence and was into his motorbikes and was regularly hanging out with his mates, playing rugby league for his local club or working on his bike. After finishing school, he started an apprenticeship as a fitter and turner at a company called British Standard Machinery, or Britstan, and it was known. Dad told us he hated the work as it was simple and repetitive, or boring as batshit, as he put it. He did, however, make more friends through Britstan, including meeting Bob McDonald, who was a mate of another apprentice. Bob ended up becoming Dad's best friend and the brother-in-law he never had after later marrying his sister Jan. Talking to Bob earlier this week, he told me he was drawn to Baz from the start as he could always see the entertainment or the potential for it in any situation and was always quick-witted and up to mischief. Baz was still going out with Cheryl by then, who was working as a secretary at the local brickworks. In 1955, having turned 18, Baz was called up for his 6 months national service, which was mandatory at the time. He did his service with the Air Force at Rathmines in Lake Macquarie on the New South Wales north coast, where he made more friends and got up to his fair share of mischief as always, before returning to Sydney to complete his apprenticeship. Somehow his relationship with Cheryl survived, and eventually Dad popped the question, and they were married at the age of 21 in the Baptist Church at Punchbowl in 1958. Dad, having finished his apprenticeship by this stage, decided he'd had enough of the city life and his trade, and found an opportunity to work out in the bush on a relative's property. He then dragged his new wife out into country South Australia to live on a sheep station called Trossachs, where he became an accomplished horseman and jackaroo. After a couple of years, they moved back to Sydney, moving in with Baz's parents at Punchbowl, and Baz got a job at Sydenham as a type of mobile mechanic that he quite enjoyed, apparently. By this stage, he'd applied to join the New South Wales Police, and once accepted, commenced training at the Redfern Police Academy in August 1960. He finished his training a month later, and with his already established horse riding skills, went straight into the Mounted Police, who were and still are based at the Redfern Academy site. Things must have been going well on the home front, as Cheryl soon fell pregnant, and in July 1961, my sister Jenny was born. With a steady income for Baz from the police and Cheryl as a secretary at the nearby Sunbeam factory, they bought a block of land and started building their own home in the then outer western Sydney suburb of Greenacre. They moved into their new home in 1962, and yours truly was born in 1963. When Cheryl was at home looking after the two littlies, Baz continued his regular duties in the Mounties, which, as we didn't have a car at that stage, involved getting up well before dawn and walking the 2 kilometres to Bankstown train station to catch the Red Rattler into Redfern. At the same time, he was doing various other jobs on the side to help pay the bills and save money for a car, such as working with his neighbour across the road, Jack Whitfield, laying concrete curb and guttering in the many new suburbs popping up around Sydney. Whilst in the Mounties, Baz, with his interest in music, learnt that the police force had their own band made up of serving police officers. Liking the idea of this, he made a few inquiries and found that the band members were all attached to various police stations around the city, and that their work time was divided between general policing duties, band duties, and teaching music to the kids at the various police and citizens' boys' clubs around Sydney. He also found that there was the opportunity to borrow an instrument to learn, get lessons, and even complete a bandmaster's class so he could conduct the band. He jumped into this head first, and at the ripe old age of 27, his musical career was launched, and he was soon blurting away learning the trumpet. With 2 young kids to care for, Cheryl wasn't overjoyed with the racket, so Baz developed a system of half burying himself into his wardrobe with his clothes muffling the strained sounds of his trumpet. Knowing he had to be of a reasonable standard to be accepted into the band, he made sure he turned up to all his lessons and put in plenty of practice. In 1966, he was transferred near home to Bankstown Police Station to perform general duties. By then, his playing had improved greatly, and he'd moved over to woodwind instruments, learning the saxophone and clarinet. In 1967, he was finally accepted as a member of the police band, and as part of his duties began teaching kids at Bankstown Boys Club under the guidance of another police band member, Max Gruggan. The Bankstown band at this stage was already an accomplished and well-respected all-boys brass band. Not long after Baz's arrival, a junior band was started for any kids wanting to learn an instrument and those not yet proficient enough to play with the big boys in the senior band. The band rehearsed 2 nights a week, requiring Dad's attendance as per his rostered police duties, and mysteriously, Jenny and I were both soon members of the junior band and both learning the trumpet. Baz continued along in his police band and boys club duties, and in 1969 was awarded the Snyder Scholarship, allowing him to further his musical training at the New South Wales Conservatorium of Music. Around the same time, just after I'd started school, a mum finally had her days back. She fell pregnant again, and my little sister Linda was born in December 1969. Baz moved around a bit with the police until in 1975 the police band became a full-time position within the police force. Max Gruggan left the police band and therefore the police band and therefore the boys club band, and Baz became the bandmaster of the senior band with his mate Alan Gallagher, the boss of the junior band. Other police band members helped out as individual instructors as part of their duties, including Baz's friend, fellow artist and the Goon Show and aficionado, Neville Briggs, who Baz simply referred to as Blogs. Baz loved the Goons, and listening to the show on ABC radio was a weekly must. I can remember more than once Shirl saying, "Can you go and find your father? I'm sure I heard the car come down the driveway." I'd go out and find him sitting in the car parked in the garage, where he'd stay until the show had finished. It was also around this time that the Boys Club band began to change with Baz's influence from being a brass band to a concert band, with the inclusion of woodwind instruments such as clarinets, saxophones and flutes, amongst others. It was also the acceptance into the playing group of girls, and all three of us Grove-Jones kids were members of the band at some stage, and have all fond memories and have made lifelong friends from this era of our lives. Baz led the band on many a good time during these years, including the band's second concert tour of New Zealand in 1976, after they'd previously toured in the late 60s, weekend stays at Camp Mackay, Currajong, the annual October long weekend trips to Foster on the New South Wales North Coast for the Oyster Festival, and my personal favourite, the concerts at Luna Park, where the kids in the band would get free tickets for the rides. Mum and Dad powered through the 70s and 80s, with our house becoming a popular hangout for kids from our neighbourhood and the Boys Club band. There was lots of happiness, fun and laughter. Baz had become a kind of father figure and mentor to lots of the kids, offering advice and encouragement where needed. Shirl was also scooped into this, doing plenty of her own counselling and comforting where needed. For many band kids, this carried on even when they'd left the band, dropping in to show off the car they just bought or the news of a new job they had or some other important moment in their lives they wanted to share. That's just how it was. During this time, through Baz, music became important to all of us in the Grove-Jones family, and for a couple of crazy years there, all three of us kids were playing instruments and all getting piano lessons at the same time. It was absolute chaos. Baz remained at the police band and continued performing, though with his police rank increasing, his role with the Boys Club was reduced, and until in the early 80s he handed over the conductor's baton to his good friend Alan Gallagher. At this point, it'd be remiss of me not to talk about Dad and his well-known straightforward personality and sense of humour. He was a man who told it how it was. If he didn't like something, he'd let you know directly, or if you weren't doing something properly or not paying attention, he'd let you know in no uncertain terms. But he also somehow managed to make it funny, even though sometimes he didn't mean to. He was well known for his straightforward honesty with the kids and parents at the Boys Club band, but even more so with the police band, where bollockings from Baz, as they were known, were legendary. They were forthright and hilarious, unless, of course, you happened to be the one on the receiving end. Once he finished up with the Boys Club band, he became a bit more of a homebody and visibly softened with the birth of his first grandchild, Brittany, in 1989, and her sister Courtney a couple of years later. He doted on the girls and loved teaching them the not-so-girly pastimes of catching lizards and flies and making cubby houses, amongst other things. Baz continued on in the police band until his retirement from the police force in 1995 after 35 years' service, 28 of those in the band, after eventually becoming the commander of the band. Towards the end of his police career, though, Baz decided he would need to find something to do in retirement, so with the persuasion of his mate Alan Gallagher, he joined the Army Reserve and became a member of the 2nd Division Royal Australian Artillery Band, first as a musician and eventually as the bandmaster. He had many good times making more friends and creating more memories in the Cholgers, as he called it. He also, with the encouragement of fellow band member Neville Briggs, started to get more into his art. He had natural ability, which us kids benefited from with our school projects, as we'd get him to include one of his drawings in our work, guaranteeing some extra marks off the teacher. He joined the Bankstown Art Society and started taking lessons, and once he retired, completed an art course, receiving a diploma for his efforts. When his best mate Bob saw one of his oil paintings and said, "I wish I could do that," Baz said, "Well, come along and have a go." Soon the pair of them were regularly attending Art Fart, as they called it, attending various lessons and art courses. Baz eventually started showing his works in local exhibitions, winning awards and even selling some. Baz and Bob also took part in a few sketching field trips, as they called them, in Singleton, with the now also retired Blogs, which were also a highlight for him. Once in retirement, Baz and Shirl also began taking trips to various places around Australia, in Queensland, Victoria, South Australia and New South Wales, the favourite being the annual autumn trips to Brighton, Victoria. In the 2000s, my kids, Tale, Kyan and JC, came on the scene, much to Mum and Dad's delight, and Baz was overjoyed at the opportunity to educate some more littlies in the important things in life. My two boys, his youngest grandkids, were of particular interest to him, as he could educate them in the ways of being a man. There was lots of playing with tools and building things, making racetracks and ramps for Hot Wheels cars, and of course the appreciation of farting as a performing art. Farting. Anyone who knew Baz well knew he was a master farter. He loved it. There were many different types, according to him, but his favourites were the Braff and the Freak, and of course the SBD. That's the silent but deadly for you uneducated. His anal embouchure and comedic timing were unsurpassed. He loved to let one rip and then immediately blame it on a squeaky chair or something similar, or even better, somebody else. He also loved letting an SBD go when he knew someone would soon enter the drop zone and be overcome by the noxious fumes. Us kids, our cousins and then the grandkids were all well aware of this, but he still managed to get us on numerous occasions. On this subject, earlier this week as the girls and I were going through the sombre but sometimes amusing process of selecting photos in preparation for today, I came across a photo of my sisters. They were both standing near the dining room table at Greenacre, both with looks of horror on their faces, and I had a fair idea of what had occurred. I turned the photo over and there, in Mum's neat handwriting, was the simple note, Father's Day, 1978, Baz just farted. Typical. Baz and Cheryl continued on in retirement, with us kids each dealing with our own families, careers and kids, but with regular visits and family get-togethers with Grandad and Nana Cheryl. When Baz was in his mid-70s, Mum and us kids started to notice a progressive change in Dad, in particular with his short-term memory. After much consternation, doctors' visits and testing, in 2011 he was eventually diagnosed with dementia. There were many check-in phone calls and regular pop-ins to keep an eye on things. However, it was becoming apparent Mum and Dad were having trouble looking after themselves, let alone each other. In the absence of any reliable care and supervision, in 2013, Linda made the decision to quit her job and move back in with them to become their full-time carer, a decision that Jen and I will always be hugely thankful for. Sadly, not long after this, we lost Mum after she finally succumbed to the mental depression she'd been suffering for many years. It was a hard time for everyone. Linda continued to care for Dad for another 2 years until it became obvious with his deteriorating condition that he's in need of full-time professional medical supervision, so he moved into a nursing home at Georges Hall. After about 12 months, he was moved into the dementia ward after he, in typical Baz fashion, had made several attempts to escape what he described as some dodgy motel place. To facilitate these escapes, he would wait until the coast was clear, then get into the nurse's station and ring a taxi to come and get him, or ring one of us kids asking us to come and rescue him. He would also regularly ask any visitors if they could drop him off at Greenacre on their way home. There were many and regular visits from us kids, grandkids and other family and friends over the ensuing years until we finally lost him to this illness last week. I'll always remember him as a good father who gave me who gave me lots of valuable guidance in his special way of how to be a good man, knowing right from wrong and how to treat other people. He was a good man. Jenny, Linda and I have not only lost a wonderful father and role model, we've lost a friend who we're going to miss forever. Like Baz, I'm not much of a religious man either, but I hope there's somewhere we go after this life and at some time in the future I can catch up with him again for a chat and maybe just the one. Have a senior, Baz.
Well done, Stephen. Well done. Extremely difficult, as we all know, but you today, on behalf of yourself, Jenny and Linda, and of course your mum Shirley, have just captured the characteristics of a man that has guided you all, as we've heard today, throughout life, but more importantly, shared love, gave you life experiences, taught you right from wrong, taught you humour, and you shared a lot of that here today. What we've heard is a typical family environment. And yes, it's difficult, Stephen, to capture 85 years of someone's life that you love. But let me assure you, my friend, you did a great job today and your father would be proud of that tribute. Well done. I've shared memories of Barry's life. You heard Stephen reflect, and also a tribute from the grandchildren. The family has put together a collage of memories of Barry's life we invite you to share on screen today. Thank you.
Put your head on my shoulder, hold me in your arms, baby, squeeze me oh so tight, show me that you love me too. Put your lips next to mine, dear. Won't you kiss me once, baby? Just a kiss goodnight, maybe. You and I will fall in love. Some people say that love's a game you just can't win. If there's a way, I'll find it someday, and then this fool will rush in. Put your head on my shoulder, whisper in my ear, baby, words I want to hear. Tell me that you love me too. Some people say that love's a game you just can't win. If there's a way, I'll find it someday, and then this fool will rush in. Put your head on my shoulder, whisper in my ear, baby, words I want to hear. Tell me, put your head on my shoulder.
No doubt, as family and friends, memories of Barry's life you will treasure for a long, long time. In a moment, I'll invite Jenny, who will come forward as a sign of love and tribute to their granddad, and place 5 individual roses on behalf of the grandchildren as a sign of respect and a tribute to their much-loved granddad. I then have the honour of inviting the immediate family, led by both Jenny, Stephen, Linda and Jan, followed by extended family, for the opportunity to come forward. You may choose to place a flower or just stand and place your hand to say your own form of farewell to Barry. Thank you. We now sadly approach that moment of farewell. Today we've reflected, shared memories, spoke of influence, coaching and guidance of a great man. But more importantly, we have shared and honoured the greatest attributes in life any loved one would want honoured, and that has been Barry's love, but more importantly, his guidance, reassurance, nurturing and coaching, and the instalment of respect and love to family and friends alike. There's no question and no doubt that Barry's going to be remembered as a man with a heart of gold, who not only took time to fill his life with love, but more importantly, people like yourself here today and others with love. He will now be reunited with family and friends alike, but more importantly, the love of his life in Shirley. He will commence a new journey, new battle. Barry, may you commence your journey, my friend. I hope you rest in peace, and God bless.
There's a song that I recall my mother sang to me. She sang it as she tucked me in when I was 93.
Who was that bum?
Ying tong, 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 ying tong,
In a light pole. Keep hard up, keep up.
keep up, lad.
Ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, in a light pole, lad.
Ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying like a lad.
In a light pole.
Ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying like a ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying like a
Oh,
ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying like a ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying like a ying like a
Hear the crazy rhythm, raving me insane. Strike up on the bum.
oh, I felt no pain. Ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, in a light pole. She going, lad. Ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, in a light pole. Look out! Ying tong.